Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Coaches on Couches, episode 13 on July 10th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Today we have a wonderful panel discussion called Beauty and the Beam. The guest panelists today and lecturers are going to be amazing. As you can probably recognize their names and their faces, these are some of the premier instructors in the country, and they're going to briefly introduce themselves. Please remember the protocols. Make sure that your computer is mute and your video is off. Therefore, we get the strongest bandwidth and volume from our speakers. Please stay on topic. This is about balance beam. We are not going to discuss anything else at this time. If you have any direct questions, please use the chat button and send it to John Min or my co-host Pat Goldsmith. This episode is being recorded and will be available on YouTube this weekend. So once again, thank you so much for joining us on Coaches on Couches. I'm now going to introduce the panel. Briefly, Mary Lee Tracy, would you go first?
I think, well, you just introduced me. I'm Mary Lee Tracy. I own Cincinnati Gymnastics. I've been coaching for well over 40 years and just hope to be able to share whatever kind of knowledge I've gained over the years with all of you coaches.
Thank you so much. Next, Tammy Biggs.
Hello, I'm Tammy Biggs, and I've been on staff and coaching forever, whatever. But I'm here. Hopefully, I can give you some help, some tips, some ideas. But this is tough times. But hey, Zooming is wonderful, and it works really good. And you have to know that most people really care about everyone and want to help. So if there's anything along the way, feel free to ask any one of us. We'll be free to help.
Thank you so much. And you're not seeing double, but this is now Tammy Salciano.
Hi, I'm Tammy Salciano from Salciano Elite. I was the coach of my...
Oops. Oh, I'm sorry, Tammy. We got you unmuted. Could you unmute yourself? You lost your sound. Sorry about that. On the other computer. Just unmute yourself. Can you do that? A little technical difficulty. I apologize. Not on the phone, but on the computer.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry about that. Yes,
okay.
You're good. So please continue.
Tammy Salciano from Salciano Elite. I was the former coach of my Keith, the two-time junior national champion. And actually, everything I learned from these ladies, so.
That's wonderful. And once again, I do apologize, but Christy Phillips Bannister will not be on the panel tonight. Unfortunately, her husband had an accident and is in surgery tonight. So once again, we do wish our best for his recovery. So tonight's episode is The Beauty and the Beam. As you know, it's a kind of a little play on word on Beauty and the Beast. For many gymnasts, the beam is kind of like the beast of gymnastics. It's the event that, a lot of girls really dread to do. There's a lot of fear issues. Sometimes there's a lot of doubt issues. There's such a small leeway from like hitting it to not hitting it. And without mentioning names, we know there's a lot of great athletes, gymnasts at the Olympic, national, international level where, that little slip, that little bobble just cost them on beam. So we're going to definitely analyze, talk about balance beam, how to strengthen our athletes on balance beam, how to develop good, strong habits on balance beam, and basically make great beam queens, as I like to call them. So we're going to start off with Mary Lee Tracy first. So when you're dealing with, let's say, the little girls, the beginners, the little tots, trying to develop their love for beam, their fearlessness and everything, what would you say is the best approach? Would you try to throw them on a high beam and do lots of simple stuff, or would you go to like a low beam and do like more difficult stuff? What is your philosophy, Mary Lee?
Well, I have fallen in love with the laser beam. The laser beams are the best for all levels. And especially right now in this comeback process, I really feel like it has made the comeback and the transition. We've been back maybe a month, and it's been really helpful. But I think the key word, John, when you started off was you have to get the kids to love the balance beam. And if you scare them to death, they're not going to love the balance beam. So whether it's the very young kids, keep it low. There's just no point in bringing it up right away. And even with your higher level athletes, I've always felt like if it's fearful, it's real. I don't like it. It's not fun. But guess what? Neither do they. Like, that's the biggest thing as a coach you have to remember, is that no one wants to be afraid. No one wants to be afraid. And even though it seems silly, so many times when you know an athlete is square, lined up, does it right every time, and then all of a sudden they don't want to do it anymore, they're scared. The humiliation and threats and all of that stuff, it literally makes the fear beast grow bigger. And I'm sure a lot of you have listened to Doc Allie on the fear beast. And the more that we threaten, intensify it, as you can see, that's what it looks like. That's what they feel like when we kind of do that to them. So even when kids just stand there doing the prayers and doing all this stuff before they go, 3 seconds, then, hey, sweetheart, go do it somewhere where you're comfortable. So between low beams and laser beams, I feel like that's where it all starts.
Thank you. Those are wonderful words. Tammy Biggs, we'll go to you next. Your philosophy?
I definitely am for the laser beam. I was there when Leonard created them, and I use them constantly. And the lines on the beam have a big blue one down the middle, and it helps for body alignment and making them accountable for the placement of their feet. If their feet wiggle and move their toes, turn in, turn out, and they can't stay straight and square, that doesn't build confidence. So the more you can do it down the laser, down the beam, and when they're tumbling straight, not turned out, because the hips open. So the more confidence you get, because I've been with Tammy's kids for the last month, Tammy Sassiano, and I love them, and they are doing phenomenal. And no pressure to go up or down, but their level right now is huge, because I built their confidence on a laser with drills, with that, never forcing them to go up. And then when we go up, we do what's comfortable for them, working the high expectation of freezing the feet, freezing the arms, and trying to get rid of all the little deductions, that those deductions make them feel uncomfortable. They don't realize it's a 3 or a 5, but what happens is every time they do it, it makes them feel like they can't achieve the skill. So it doesn't matter how much you water back and move forward. If they're accountable for every move they do, it trains your brain and it makes you feel really confident.
Thank you so much. And Tammy Salciano, your philosophy? Same?
Well, that would be 3 on laser beams. We love them too. I think that Tammy Biggs taught me a lot to take the girls through very good fundamental basics on beam. And anytime you're missing some fundamentals, you see a lot of difficulty come up on the high beam. So progressions are everything. And I actually work with the girls like Tammy down on the low laser beam, straight hands, straight feet, make sure that, confidence is built by good technical quality. And you can't miss a cartwheel to get to an aerial. I mean, you just have to do fundamentals. And once the kids' basics are very, very strong, then to build upon them, it becomes very easy. So, and that just instills the confidence. But again, I love the laser beams as well.
Thank you so much. Now, when we're talking, I'm sorry, Mary Lee, please.
I just wanted to add one more small thing when we're talking about basics from the little kids up, visual. They have to see what they're doing. So many kids I'll do a camp or a clinic, and you ask them what they see and they say nothing. Well, if I was jumping backwards or forwards on 4 inches and I didn't see anything, I would probably be fearful. I think there's a lot of things you can spot. I think different kids spot different things. Some kids stay on a back handspring, look at their hands, some look at their feet. You may have a personal choice in the way you coach. Just like on jumps and leaps, I know all of us who coach beam here, we all have difference of opinion. And I do think that you start with your opinion, but if something works better for them to spot, they need to feel visually secure every time they do a skill on the beam. Even if it's just walking down the beam, spot the end of the beam. Anything that they're doing, the more that, and that's what's nice when Tammy was talking about the blue line, that's what kind of made me think of it. Not only for the good feet alignment, but that the blue is like, because I know I constantly say, foot on the blue line, hand on the blue line, keep your eye on the blue line. It could have been a purple line. It doesn't matter. It just teaches them to use their eyes more when they're on the beam.
Yes, definitely visual perception. I know a lot of the park coaches say the same thing. You got to know where you're going, what you're seeing, and what you're doing. Just curious, Mary Lee, since I have you, A lot of kids, when they first start off on beam, they have a tendency to try to look directly down at their feet or look down with their body posture. How do you normally try to nix that, or what do you like to say for the visual position?
John, I like them to look down without dropping their chin below 90 degrees. So if you have an athlete, just stand and teach them how to put the beam peripherally in front of them, even with their arms, that they can see everything at the same time. I do think that kids need to learn to look down without dropping their chin below 90 degrees.
Oh, that's very good. I like that. So basically keep that military chin. Use your
Military chin, yes.
Yep, yeah, I remember.
Yes,
and keep that focus. What about you, Tammy Biggs, on the visual perception and focus on beam?
Well, to me, there's spotting in every skill. For example, the side aerial, even if a kid took off great body alignment, which they would have the weight on the back foot, as soon as they take off, the timing, the dynamics, and the degree of the spot creates a great aerial, which creates a great roundoff. So the head spot, to me, is in a ginger. It's in everything. There's a head spot in a pirouetting. When they're up, they should be looking where they're going. There's so much that they do not see and look. In turns and leaps, everything has a spot. They have a hold of the head, then a spot. They have no clue that half the time they just turn their head, and it creates no setup for any turn, any leap, or any skill because their head is out of control. So the head spotting is huge to me. And so I've got 1,000,001 head spots and sometimes the kids, they don't know how to turn it. I call it a no, where they turn it sharp. They dip it, they turn it, they lay it, they do all kinds of stuff. And basically it's military chin, and it looks. And the timing of the look squares the hips. So to me, it's everything. So.
That's wonderful. I'm going to slightly switch the topic now to Tammy Salciano. So now that we're past the class and developing the gymnasts now at the pre-team and the lower level teams. So what is your philosophy on using what we call beam apparatuses or beam matting? Like mats on top of the beam, wings on the side, a flat beam, stacking mats up high, panel mats on the side. What do you believe about those types of training tools?
Well, I feel like if you do very good fundamentals obviously padding on the beam, I feel is for safety of the heels, no bruising, things like that. But I typically normally will do such good fundamentals, and if the kid is confident, I don't really do a lot of build-ups on the beam. I like to take them up to the higher beam without build-ups. I have found that that's worked really well. I don't know how the others feel about that, but I feel like when you continue to stack mats, it's just like being on the low beam. You really don't make a lot of progress like that. I feel like sometimes it handicaps the kids, doesn't help them to progress. I mean, when you have good fundamentals, everything's good on the lower beam. If it's a matter of safety and saving the feet, like I said, like a front tuck or something like that, of course we want to pad. But when we're doing build-ups all around, I think I like to do build-ups on the end for a dismount, but not under. So you can ask the others their opinion on that, but.
Yeah.
There was a little philosophy. They said that if you go through a hole with one object, and then you try to stack up too many objects and try to go back out the hole, you get stuck. So I agree, because whatever you build up, you have to go back and build it down.
Exactly.
You're almost, in a sense, doubling the amount of time and effort. Mary Lee, how do you feel about that?
Well, I have a little bit difference of opinion because I feel like it's much more of an individualized process. And I do feel that I would rather build up than to spot. I don't like to spot beam because I feel like that's a real crutch. Now, if I have an aggressive beamer, I totally agree with you, Tammy. Like, you know what, mastered on the low beam, excellence. They see, they know, they're confident. But, you just have those scared chickens on beam. And I feel that you have to make exceptions sometimes. I also feel with really big skills on beam, like, to me, that would be like an Arabian or a full. I do feel like the first couple times, like a lot of times I'll stack or usually it's a resi pit. I'll put a resi under the beam just for the first couple. But I know that my beam coaches that are at level, say 7 and 8, and the flights and the intense fear and all of that. I know that it sometimes goes 3 8-inchers. Oh, guess what, Mary Lee, I took one out. I only used 2 today. Oh, guess what? You know, I mean, for some kids, if that works, then do it. As far as on the beam, I totally agree, Tammy. Man, I would protect those heels as much as I can. Personally, I like those flop over, either green or yellow. I like those the best. I mean, we've used everything from obviously bath pads to, but I don't like to be unrealistic either, that it's so thick that their feet can't feel, especially when we talk so much about feeling the beam. So yeah, that's pretty much how I feel.
Thank you, Mary Lee. So Tammy Biggs, both spotting and pads and all that philosophy. What is yours?
Okay, first, obviously, I do lead ups and basics, and I always use a pad for fronts, because you bruise your heel once on beam, you've lost 3 events. So I use pads. I can use them all the way up to because they change the technique to land soft. And that can happen. And right now, our whole country is having trouble working through their toes, too much flat-footed landing instead of through the toes. I always talk about when we do back handspring, step out to 2 foot to the layout, they have to land through their toes to get a normal rebound. Too many of them do a rebound flat, and it really destroys the ankle and feet. So using the pads and working through the feet. And then I never do 8-inch mats unless that's all a kid has. I like the canyon block that Tammy Sassiano has because it's flush. So if I have a bunch of flights for the girls, and I put it at the end so they can go correctly, but the pounding of the 2-foot layout has a pad and it's flush. To me, a low beam with nothing around it is too dangerous for the ankles. A built-up beam with 8 inches, they try to reach for it and whatever. So I found the canyon blocks are fabulous because you can put them beside for a mount or a dismount or something that one skill. And 2 turns, they can pull it away and it moves away right away. So it's all flush and padded. And so it just gives them the visual of where they're going to spot before they throw it by itself. So, but normally the lead-ups I've just seen too many injuries with 8-inch mats underneath, rolling the ankle, stepping off, doing, it's just, they have to be accountable on top. And I don't care if they water back to 3 back handsprings and they normally have back handspring lay. It's all in the same family. So again, if they're calm and square and jumping to their arms and pushing, and I have a mental training thing where they break down the skills. So they mentally have to tell me what they are thinking. So with that, I can guide them in a way to get the right uses of words and the skill. So, you have to do what you have to do, but it just makes me nervous on a low beam with no pads or panel mats. That's kind of nervous. And I love the yellow mats to stack over. And then if I use a canyon block here and there, it's safer because it has a margin of error. So
thank you so much. And I love the fact that you're using the word safe. A lot
safe
of times
that's all it's about to me.
It really is, because at MAGMA, our motto is SPQR, and that's the order. And safety is the number one thing.
Yeah, to me, safety is the first.
It is the first. And I'm just so glad to hear that. And
I tell you, if you don't get upset with them, but you give them the basics of 3 back handsprings in a row, and then give them to jump and go for form execution and the squareness, they build their confidence. And if you change directions and have them built up and don't have so many numbers they can't achieve it, I just do 3 passes or 3 of the skill. And if they achieve it, that's all their brain can handle at this point, especially with the virus and this and that. So to contain it and make them feel comfortable, and then I make sure whatever I do on beam is not trashing vault and tumbling. So I cannot have back handsprings or aerials or any skill that's going to move over to floor and vault trashy on beam, because it's the beam person. Sorry, beam people. It's your responsibility to make them confident and calm and not tear up the other events by buckling their knees. So
I will say something. Can I just,
please,
just
yes.
like Meredith said, it's an individual approach. My preference is not to match. But I do like the canyon blocks because it does give a firm surface on each side of the beam if you have to step up, like Tammy said. But, you know, for each athlete, it's completely different. So you have to determine what's in their best interest, you know, as far as confidence and building confidence. And, you know, you got some kids that will get up and go and some that need a lot more, you know, of a support system. So
no, definitely. And we must consider that we have to think of different levels, you know, whether it's a high school athlete, an Excel athlete, a JO,
correct,
or an elite athlete. So definitely you have to, like you, Mary Lee, and you said, tailor make it to the athlete. Tammy Biggs, you had your hand up?
Yeah, and you have to give a way for the kids to get out and have a drill to fix the skill that doesn't make them feel bad. They can't feel bad. They have to know, I got there by doing this drill, and it's quite all right. Do single back handsprings and come down and do this. And if you give them a way out to build confidence, they may have a good day, a bad day, but they'll come through it. But if they feel guilty, there's no way. Then it snowballs into it's too much pressure for them to carry on. So always give them drills and stuff that they led up to get it so they can water back and do the drills again.
Thank you. That's wonderful. I'm going to go back to Tammy Sasianu. When you do beam, especially for your optional team, do you have like a standard warm-up or complex that they do every day or the majority of the time before they actually move on to their skills?
Yes, actually we do balance beam on the floor lines, or we have multiple of the what do we call them, the laser beams, and we lay them out and we do progressions there and we get repetition there. I also have them do volumes of routines down instead of up. My numbers up on the high beam are very, very small. You know, I keep it to about 5 routines. And if they error on a particular skill, then we go back down and drill that skill and do the numbers down. So I don't do a lot of numbers on top. I try to make them very confident by doing good quality gymnastics on top of the beam. You know, I think that, you know, back in the day when I was a gymnast, if you missed a cartwheel, you do 25. Well, you know, times have changed. These skills, especially for the optional program, really require, you know, you going down and just working on your hands and feet, or just very good fundamentals. Take it down, work it out. And then the kids are really confident, because if they make an error and they don't fix that error, they continue to fall. So, you know, good progressions, again, down, numbers, repetitions, basics, and then we get up to the high beam and, you know, no more than 5 on a beam, you know, routine or parts.
Thank you. Mary Lee, the same question. How do you run it at your gym?
I would just talk about complex first. I like to give my coach, I don't like to put my coaches in a box when it comes to any event, but I do like a lot of procedural things. And the word complex is a very important word on every event. On beam, what I ask my coaches is there's just a basic 3-part, and you can, out of season, those 3 parts can be like this big. Like after you talk to Tammy Biggs, those 3 parts can be this big, because Tammy gave me a whole bunch of stuff recently for feet. But like I start off and it's always about kicks, because you know you're going to jump and you leap. So you can do your kicks on the floor, you know, the front to back, or you can just do battements, or there's a million different types of kicks, and be creative. So your athletes begin to know that complex always starts with kicks. Then we usually take kicks to the beam, and just to have active core, do a lot of front to back kicks on both sides. And then we always do the compulsory kicks, because I just think they're awesome. You know, front, pull down, side, back, needle kick, stand up. Then warm up for your jumps and leaps, which would be a lot of straight leg skips. Tammy swears by them, and after many years of doing it, I do the same thing. You can do a lot of different arm types, sometimes bringing them over the head, sometimes front, middle, press back, sometimes where they plie and land, sometimes where they connect. All of that builds up for the jumps and leaps. And then, and like I said, each segment can be as long as you want. So now the next thing is just jumping, because we have so many turning jumps. Tammy gave me a lot of really good stuff about jumping and landing on your toes. So you jump off of your feet and you land on the balls of your feet. And then you do that with quarter turns, you do that with half turns. So we have a jumping segment, and then we finish with an acro warm-up, which is always the handstand step down, step ins on the right, handstand step ins on the left, and then 2-foot snap downs. And then depending on the level, you can put your cartwheels in your back, walkovers or whatever. But it, you know, kicks, leaps and jumps, acro, and then go. So, and think about it, like a level 3, what they would put in those 3 categories is obviously different than what I would put in those 3 categories as an elite. Some things would overlap. But when you create your complex or you teach your kids your complex, whatever you think that format should be, teach it to your whole staff so that your kids know what complex means, and there's some kind of synchronicity between the level 3s that go to 4, that goes to 6, or whatever your system is.
Thank you so much, Mary Lee. And of course, we didn't forget about you.
Okay. Speaking of that, it's very, very important that whatever drills you do with the top kids, you pass through the whole gym, because it's very important, because it doesn't matter if the kid's doing it on the ground, on the beam, laser beam, or on high. If they're all basically doing it tumble track, wherever, and if they're all attempting it some way at a whatever level that is, it makes the gym on the whole page together. If you have a gym, and I go in a gym and somebody's going, say a double back on floor, for example. I know we're not doing floor, but it'd be off beam. And if everybody goes in the gym and goes, oh, yay, well, that's making that kid more pressure that nobody else is doing it. But if everybody's doing a drill of rolling pike, and they know it's for double pike, and they may never have done one except in the pit, they feel like they've done it. So it makes everybody feel less pressure, because they already feel pressure. So I try to do everyone, and then they have choices. I'm really big into them having choices. So I do all the levels, all forward, back, side, all the skills. And then I make it to where they have to do 3 in a row. And then they make the decision themselves, which one. Sometimes they pick an Anoti. I mean, look, Sophie Butler picked an Anoti. I would not have picked it for her. It's gorgeous on her now. But she had a choice, and so she picked that. Somebody else may have a beautiful Anoti, but they didn't pick it because maybe they're scared of it. So if you give everybody a chance to attempt it all, you never know who's going to have that skill. But give them choices. Choices make a big difference, and make to where everybody in the gym is watered down with what you're doing with the beginning all the way through.
Thank you so much. Tammy Salciano, when running one of your beam rotations for your optionals and high-level gymnasts, how do you normally handle your breakdown between the actual acro flight elements and dance? Do you do it simultaneously with different stations? Do you tend to focus on one more than the other? We'd love to hear that.
Yeah, we do different stations throughout. So, you know, we may have perhaps dismounts into the pit. We may have leaping stations. We may have, you know, I break it up into systematically where I think where the kids need to work the most. You have to look at every individual athlete and see what their strengths and weaknesses are, you know, particularly if they're on leaping, then you give them some leaping stations, maybe some floor stations to develop that. If they're weak on acro, or if they're overlapping the hands, you know, it's kind of, again, I do have a system where there's various stations to improve leaping, improve tumbling, improve, and it's not just on the high beam, it's throughout, you know, the gym, active flexibility, those kinds of things. But you really have to, again, make the kid confident and go after, because you have a flexible athlete that maybe is not powerful for a dismount. You have a strong athlete, I mean, a very strong athlete that maybe can't leap on the beam. And so it's not just one plan for everybody. I think we take and look at what their strengths are and put them into different stations to develop where they need to develop their best opportunity to improve, if that makes sense.
And also, do you try to link your floor dance elements with your beam dance elements and vice versa for the individual athletes?
Oh, yes. Yes, for sure. Yep.
Thank you. Mary Lee Tracy, same question.
Yes, similar. I think the challenge, it's great with the elite kids. I can individualize workouts much, much better. But when it's the masses, it's a little bit more challenging. So, for example, an assignment right now in the summer would look something like complex first, and then there would be so many of each skill. Half of the group may be on tumble ups, 5 of each element, and then 5 of each element up on the high beam. But like, whether it's even if I call it a tumble set, it still includes acro. So like everything is equal. So if we're doing 5 of every element or 10 of every element or whatever we're doing, tumble ups, dance ups, it's always the same. Now, like you said, Tammy, with higher level kids, individual things, but just as a general procedure, then kids start to see that dance and acro, in your opinion, are equal. And especially when you look at the values, so many times they are equal. So I find that whenever you do tumble sets, it really is like a tumble dance set. If you are giving out numbers of X number of each element to work on, try to keep it relatively balanced. I do feel like you can do higher numbers of dance. So like jumps and leaps, I may have more of a 10, is where on an acro, especially on a high beam, I may have more of a 5.
Thank you so much. Mrs. Biggs?
Okay, I have things I divide up into complexes. And right now, the last month, we've been working on upgrading. First, in the start, was upgrading all the dance. Second, it came the tumbling. And I was beginning to do the basics of that to upgrade it. And it's evolving to, in about 4 weeks, it'll be in stations to where and I do the artistry in and out of each pass, so it's already ready. So some of them, it's maybe movement that they take from their floor, but a lot of it is I'm eliminating deductions, whether they're doing it for JO, for college, or for elite. And so JO has up to the level. JO has standing 1,002. We have 1,000, but we have artistry deductions. So I include those when they learn the skills. So even if they're not going to use it, they're required to do artistry in and out to be able to do it in a pass. And then they're all done in passes of 3. And then what happens when I piece it all together, I'll have a whole complex for all turns, all leaps, all stuff. I can piecemeal it all through the year and then guide it to where, okay, you chose the turgente half, you chose the leg up turn, you chose the wolf turn. Then those drills go for that athlete and the other drills, and the same with tumbling. So before they know it, they already have a high level mount, dismount, 2 flights inside. They've got single skills. So they're learning the rules and doing the artistry. So when they step in, they should not have 3/10 like most everybody does. They do a flight first till they get unafraid, but they aren't making the flight where it has no deductions. So they're building in and training deductions. So I'm eliminating deductions. I don't mind. You can't connect it. Step off the laser. Then try it with the back handspring. I even did it at a Zoom where they would do it and then they would sit in a chair and push back for the back handspring. So they're doing artistry to showcase the flights so that when the routine comes together, half the dance is done, all the deductions are done, everything's already taken away. And JO and Elite are really pretty similar now when you have to have so many levels of dance on beam and floor and so many levels. It's just like Elite having 3 of high level leaps and turns to match the tumbling. So to me, it's much easier now to work JO and Elite at the same time. And that's what gets to college. So
I will say,
yes,
just on behalf of Tammy, I like that she gives every gymnast an opportunity to develop every leap, every skill, whether it be, like you said, a nodie or whatever. And you'd be surprised because just by her exposing the athletes, you wouldn't think that a child would fit that skill. But actually, it's pretty incredible because she can walk into a gym and give the opportunity of multiple leaps and dance, and you go, wow, that really works for that athlete. And so it's just not this athlete goes that direction, this athlete goes, another direction. If you give them, all the different varieties of skills and leaps, and like Mary Lee Tracy said, dance is equally as important as skills right now. You can actually pick and choose over time what's going to work for that athlete. You know, we kind of just say, okay, we stick to a certain pattern, but it's amazing. I mean, kids can actually rise to the occasion and actually, you know, really surprise you if they have the exposure to new elements. And Tammy's kind of a guru at that.
Absolutely. Mary Lee?
I just wanted to add one small thing. You know how we talk about routine maintenance year round and we talk about it on the other events? I do routine maintenance on beam, usually depending on level or whatever, you know, whether it's every other day, whether it's 2 times a week, 3 times a week, you know, continuing with last year's routine always keeps kids at a certain level. What I find, whether, and in particular, I'm probably talking mostly about bars and beam, but actually floor too. You know, when we get going, a lot of times, I feel that kids get excited about these new things and we get excited about these new things. Then what happens is, because we didn't do enough routine maintenance, we go back and we end up having to take all the upgrades out because we can't do what we did last year. So
that's huge.
It's huge. And so like I said, Monday, Wednesdays, and Friday. The other thing, Tammy, too, that I have found is, like, let's say, and because you're helping me with my athletes, let's say that they last year did, you know, a back handspring layout or layout or whatever, and you want to upgrade that. So if you keep like the basic of the routine together, then the upgrades are not as big of a deal because they're just going to put that where that was or put that where that was. And it really takes a little bit of the adding it back into a routine much, much easier. So some kids say, I can't remember, like at a camp or clinic, I don't remember my routine from last year. Well, you should. And, you know, even if, like some coaches believe in a brand new beam routine every year. Other coaches believe in just tweaking. And I'm more believing in the tweaking unless something's just god awful or they had a nightmare year with a routine. But pretty much you can stay with your routine and just constantly change it and make it come alive based on what the skill level is. I know, Tammy, you always taught me like routine maintenance, like you got to stay fit, and it's another fitness level too. I mean, you have to be fit to get through a routine. If you go through a routine aggressive, they're winded. If they're doing it aggressively without stopping all over the place, it's cardio. So keeping that routine maintenance up, even if, like, say kids got a little injury, a little tweak, you know, if it's supposed to be an aerial, do a cartwheel, but keep the maintenance of a routine going year round.
Marilee, do you do beam cardio down where you're doing, say, a number of 10 routines on the line at a certain time span?
Not at this time of the year, but yes. So
yes,
like what you're saying,
beam cardio down so you can get that endurance, the numbers, the repetition.
Tammy, I saw one time this something that you did, and you had like 5 laser beams, and that's kind of where I fell in love with the laser beams. And you had like all of these kids, they were just going and going, or flight this way, flight that way, flight this way, flight that way. Those types of things keep the endurance up. But like you said, you know, you could do maybe 3 to 5 routines on the high beam, but do 10 on the laser beam.
Absolutely.
And that builds the fitness level, and, you know, repetition builds consistency, builds confidence.
Correct. Yep.
Yes, Tammy Biggs.
I want to just point out that along with this virus and people coming in and out, like Tammy Sassiano's kids have done fabulous, and the discipline and expectations huge, but we have kids that come in and out that have little boo-boos or they're not endurance. It's going to be very hard. So you have to make them understand that it doesn't matter if they're doing a handstand step down, a cartwheel, they're accountable for not moving their feet, because I can't have the kids doing lay and they're not allowed to step off. And then the kid who's injured that thinks she's not doing anything is stepping all over the place. So it's very important, because you have a little Corey, Tammy, that's been out with knees. It took me like a week and a half to make her understand that I don't mind what she does, but she has to do the same expectation as the kids throwing everything. Yes. And now she's wonderful. She's doing wonderful. Nothing is more distracting than somebody that is in the gym too many hours for the little boo-boo ankle, boo-boo this, boo-boo that. But if you maybe limit the hours, but still let them be with the group, but then live that high expectation, because you don't want to lose those kids. They're great kids, but you can't have them distracting the other, and you can't have them feeling bad about themselves. So I picked turns and this and that because she couldn't use her knees. And so I think it's a win-win when you really remember, you know, they've been through a lot and they might fit it, but they still have to have the high expectations that your healthy kid has. Because somewhere along the line, even if they're your top kid, like Lily's really good, if she had a hip flexor or she had an ankle or whatever, when she had turnout, she still had a good work ethic, even though she couldn't do everything. And remember, Mary Lee, she limped a championship with some kind of a staggy thing because she was hurt, but she never changed the work ethic. So
Yes.
try to keep that in mind for everybody, because you're going to always have a boo-boo. It's who can work through it that keeps it going. Okay. So anyway.
And adding, Tammy, too, like what you were saying about, like, so we're using more of these laser beams, low beams, in shape, out of shape. The level of excellence and detail should not change. So like you said, I don't care if it's a handstand step in because you can't do a back handspring right now, or you can't do, it's not do it, step off, do it, step off. Whether they're healthy, whether they're injured, whether they're fearful, that level of discipline, I think discipline is the key.
Right.
The level of knowing where your feet are placed, your arms are placed into and out of everything that you do, regardless of time of year. Like, even though this is summer, yes, of course, if they're throwing something the first time, there's going to be whatever. But
Yeah.
I don't even then say like it's okay to just keep stepping sideways with your right foot, stepping sideways with your right foot. Let's either technically fix it, or let's not create a bad habit by always stepping. Up
Exactly.
right.
Just pull it out. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you so much. All right, now we're going to go to a big question, the ubiquitous back handspring on beam. When you think about it, it's probably the first flight element for a compulsory gymnast, going optional for the tops gymnasts, that they have the requirement too. And just to show you how I have so much time on my hand, I actually analyzed beam workers from all over the world to see their hand position versus their leg position. And guess what? They have all types. Sinisa Lee, Riley McCusker, Simone Biles, and even Kara Aker all have 4 different hand-leg positions from all each other. So, you know, I'm going to love to hear hand positions on the beam, hand direction on the beam, when to split, how to land the back handspring. And this is something that a lot of coaches would love to hear. So we're going to open up a can of worms, and we're going to start with Mary Lee Tracy.
I was hoping it was Tammy. I'm always, so first of all, I feel like with the back handspring, the starting position is critical, because you are setting up your alignment for the whole thing. And we've got a lot of collapsing in the handstands and, you know, a lot of issues. So first of all, like when they stand there, I personally don't care whether they start with their arms low and then bring them up and bring them down, or whether they start up. Like, that's a personal choice. But if they're going to swing their arms, they must keep their eyes on the beam until their hands pass their sight of vision. One of the most common errors I see on back handsprings is the head goes before the arms. So I really feel like the swinging of the arms, allowing the shoulders to go down so the hips can go up, like a jump to handstand, which is the same as vault, which we keep talking about how all the events should tie together. Then when they have the impact on their hands, I call it pocket hands, like when I'm teaching. So, you know, if you could perfectly put your hands like this, that'd be wonderful, but that's not going to happen. So to me, the next closest thing to that is this. This would be the absolute worst thing on your entire body you could do. So I really try to get the kids. So a lot of times, especially with newer back handsprings, when you're doing your handstand step-ins, having them place their hands how they want them, I feel like they should start with the handstand step-ins. If they're doing not confident in this position, or whatever your choice of position is, just kicking up to a handstand, it's going to be an issue. I love doing the handstands to this position. This is a Tammy thing, which, gosh, Tammy, you know, like, you're obviously the beam queen, as we're talking about beam, because I feel like everything almost I've learned from Tammy. But like holding that handstand with your wrist, your shoulders, your hips, all stacked on top of each other, because so many back handsprings are lost upon contact. And a lot of that too can be because of the head position. And then as far as the step downs, I'm a total parallel feet. I love the words toe to heel. I think toe to heel is an excellent way for the step-ins. So that's my warm-up. Tammy, I know, will go like she's got a million things. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Tammy.
Well, let's go to Ms. Salciano first, and then we'll finish up with Tammy Biggs.
Well,
Okay.
you get the bonus.
Well, Mary Lee, Tracy, you're correct in pretty much everything you said. The hands, you know, I know that I worked a lot with my upper levels to try to get them as straight as possible. Hands straight, feet straight, toe to heel, excellent. Learning a handstand and that support, whatever you're going to use for the back handspring, is critical. And making sure that their head can stay in and see their feet. A lot of kids on back handsprings, they don't see their feet come down, and it's really hard to progress. And then just not tanking on the support. You know, once they jump to the back handspring, a lot of kids really, depending on how their hands are placed, it's going to set them up for the next skill. And unless they have really good alignment and good strength, then obviously they're going left or right. I really like one thing that Tammy has done on the balance beam, Tammy Biggs. And again, I know she's the beam queen. She actually has the girls do multiples of threes, you know, 3 back handspring step outs in a row, basics, fundamentals. And you can really tell when a gymnast doesn't have good progressions. They're gonna go one way or the other, and they're not confident. So a really square back handspring is critical to set up the layout, to set up a layout. And so she really forces the good fundamentals of straight hands and feet, and it's going to show up in your basic progressions, you know, when you start to add numbers in. And I think for every, you know, there's not a right hand, left hand. It really depends on the conformation of the athlete, you know, whether they have tight shoulders, you can see that they're pulling up. I have, in fact, with Marley, I changed her as a level 8. I changed her hands, and it was a little bit difficult, but I couldn't build upon what she was doing because she was always off to one side. Her hips would turn out. So, you know, so it's independent, I think, too, for the kids, which hands they put in front, depending on their body composition, you know, and their flexibility of their shoulders. There's not one way fits all.
Exactly. And coaches should learn that we shouldn't try to pigeonhole our athletes into one format, one way. Because like I said, I did lots of research, and even in all over the world, there are different positions for beam workers. Tammy Biggs, please, your philosophy.
Okay, mine's pretty out there, but I don't believe in, like, if I start with the tops kids or whoever, they must do a 2-foot layout off a block first, then a lay pike before I even let them do a 2-foot back handspring. Because if they have no jump, they have no open hips, I'm going to destroy the other events. So it's my responsibility. I take it very strongly that I don't want to be messing it up. Then if they can't do standing layout, step out. So that with square hips closing gives you a nice back handspring. So I think kids learn, even in the backyard before they get there, to not jump, to fall on their hands in walkovers, fall on their hands in back handsprings. But if you teach them how to jump first, pull the hips, pull the shins, and a flip, then they can have something to associate with to jump to get on their hands. Because everybody is different. And like she said, the tightness of everything. They have tight wrists. They have tight shoulders. They have to be able to jump on top. And so if they can't get on top of your hands, it's hard to have a placement because it's at an angle. So my requirement is, like at the tops, they earn a right to do a 2-foot back handspring by doing a 2-foot layout, standing off a block. It doesn't mean they have to throw it. And then a pike, and it's a lay pike. And that covers your back handspring 2-foot, so it won't mess up vault. Then the layout step out covers the back handspring step out. So if they can't jump enough and they split early and one leg's going the opposite way, it builds high fear because the back leg could be going in front tumbling while the front leg is going in another. And again, the hips square. So even if you found everybody had different hand placements in your back handspring study, if you see their hips, and like Simone and them, their hips and shoulders are always square. Everything is square. So now you want to clean it up. You have to do a lot of handstand hops, back handspring to handstand, like you said, for the Uchinko. So I do a lot of jumping and everything aerialed, everything flipping and then contain it into the back walkover, back handspring to fix it. Does that make sense, kind of?
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Okay, well, I'm going to go to my co-host, Pat Goldsmith. He has a few questions from the audience. He'll take it from here.
So Tammy just touched on it briefly, but we just had one question from the audience like a second ago. What is your opinion on the difference in splitting early versus splitting late on the back handspring? Would you sometimes train an athlete to do an early split or a late split depending on their individual strengths or weaknesses, or do you adhere to the late split primarily?
Oh, Tammy Biggs.
Tammy Biggs?
Okay. There's two kind of walkovers. There's two kind of back handsprings. One is, I would say, would be a compulsory type. Okay. And one is a tumbling. If you want them to tumble, you do not oversplit. And you do not turn one leg out. If you want them to have some sort of flight and oversplit, they need to be able to train a handstand with one foot on the beam, one off, one against the wall, whatever. So they're in a handstand on the floor, and they need to be able to split and stay lifted and not drop in their hips when they drop their legs. And they need to be able to go square, open, square, open. Otherwise, it's going to cause injury in their hip flexor and a lot of areas because of the oversplitting. But if you'd had a compulsory, you would do it. I don't train hardly any oversplitting except after they learn how to jump and get on top of their hands, because I need them tumbling. It's the only thing that they cannot get taken away. They can deduct their form, but it's not like leaps and turns. They can't take it away if you flip. They can't take it away. They can deduct the back handspring for 2 or 3. But oversplitting, you may never get it back square enough to tumble. You can always open it back up. But to get it square, like Connor will go back handspring square to 2 foot till her layout. Because she knows if she doesn't do that square back walkover, she's going to have her hips open and she's trying to tumble into a layout full like Lily, layout full, and that other leg's going the other way from the flexibility. So nothing's worse than a beautiful, flexible kid that never got to use her strength to square. It'd be nice to have best of both worlds, show your flexibility and your leaps and this and that. But if you don't want to mess up vault, you don't want to mess up tumbling, you need to somewhere have a balance to where they know what square is, know what jump is, know that the legs go in the same direction, and not half of it one way, half of the other. Once the legs are in a 3/10 deduction, basically the body's doing 2 different things, whether it's a front aerial, whether it's an oversplit side aerial, an oversplit back walkover, a back handspring. Form and execution is everything. And that oversplitting, dragging the back leg, pulls in the hip flexor. So safety first for me, squareness, and then fit the kid with the form and execution, and then try to teach them how to jump. Okay. And it takes a lot of time to train that. Like as somebody said, well, you only like my flexible kids. I go, no, we lose the Nastias. I love the flexible kid. I can keep a Jade. I can keep a tight kid. And Tom will go, wow, how does Jade tumble? How does she leap? How does she do this? She is very smart and she does the drills. So I can make someone tight do it. To make someone flexible, strong enough to do something to have a benefit for them is sometimes way more time consuming. And you may lose the kid before she gets a chance to know that a switch leg leap, double leg up turn is just as beautiful as Connor's back handspring layout. But that's not what the kids think. So they then sometimes think I'm oversplitting, but I don't have the bonus of this kid right next to me. And that's how we lost one kid from Rochester, New York, one of my favorite athletes. She was right next to Connor. Connor doing square, 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 power, power. She did beauty, and I loved the beauty. But I couldn't make her understand that her beauty was just as much as Connor's. So anyway, so I've just lost a lot of flexible ones along the way that broke my heart, that I wish we had it. Like we didn't think Nastia would stay in. We thought she'd be rhythmic. And she stayed in, thank goodness. So anyway, so it's a hard battle, and I hope we get to save the flexible ones. But just know, don't affect tumbling and vault. Okay, I guess that's it.
Yep.
I'm just going to add on to Tammy, and a lot of this is stuff that she's taught me, but like when you're doing, and I feel very strong about kids doing back walkovers, primarily for the back handspring. But, you know, explaining to your kids that there is such thing as a compulsory, we call it a compulsory back walkover, where you really show your split, show control in the handstand. And then we have our acro back handspring. And, you know, I never noticed until Tammy pointed it out to me, how many kids jump off of 2 feet, and this actually goes counter rotation. And that usually also is the leg that's bent. So, you know, it makes so much sense. So like if you're having trouble with kids on the back handsprings and the bent leg, I mean, we all say your legs are bent, your legs are bent, squeeze your quad, all that stuff. But, you know, really look at the root of the problem. And so many times they're jumping out of 1 foot instead of jumping out of 2 feet and bringing both legs up. Now, if you got a kid that's a little bit afraid, or you've said the same thing over and over, the way to teach it is to do the back walkovers and have them go up and then pull to that really small split at the top so they feel this leg. The other thing is those like up to a resi or a couple 8-inchers where they jump back as if they're going to do a candle, but they jump and they split. They jump and they split, but the split is small and the split is pointed upward versus this leg dragging down here. So, you know, I think sometimes, my God, it's like I've been coaching for 40 years. And, you know, this was probably last year at camp. Tammy said it to Lily, and I'm like, I never noticed that before. I never really paid attention to whether that bottom leg went up with the top leg or whether it actually counter rotated with the top leg. Just had to tell that story, Tammy.
Can I point out one thing? You'll know the kids that are on your team that are at level 10 or 8 or 9 that do layout step out. You'll tell if they're doing an oversplitting that's not jumping. It will affect their hip flexor. And then if you see your kids have cuts under their toe, because it's not a flip, it's coming in. So the split under your toe and the hip flexor and the hamstring are a dead giveaway that there is no jumping in their back handspring step out. So then they go to the layout, then they don't jump, and then it starts hurting the body. There should be no pain to us in our eyes or the judges, and no pain in the athlete. So they go for no pain, then we got it.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy. Our next question we have from the audience is, what is your preferred finish position on the landing for a series? Let's start with Tammy Celciano.
That's a loaded question.
It is a loaded question because it depends on whether you want to progress another skill out of that. So I always like arms up by the ears and then flare out. I mean, but we're talking about, you know, a sport on the higher level where you're just working on constantly connecting. So if you're planning on connecting, you don't want to finish side middle. You want to finish arms up. For instance, an aerial lay or a layout step out, pull your arms up. You want to add something to it, or, you know, it just depends on where you're going with that skill. But definitely I like arms up and then finish, you know, because it creates progressions. And we're not, you know, what we're looking at in the high level gymnastics is 3 skills connected, you know, that's where your bonus is. And so if you don't really work really good arms, then you kind of get stuck. So anyways, I got the loaded one. What do you guys think, Tammy?
Well, the arms are usually twice as slow as the legs. So like you said, you've got to work the arms to do it. But I think also with that, they're talking about whether you lunge or close. So the arms are huge. The closing is huge for me.
Huge.
A lunge is a finish. And we always start our kids by finishing them before they even started. So they're already in a lunge. Simone and everybody started with 2 foot. Then they stepped out. When they finished, they decided, that's all I'm going to do is lay. Let's make sure I'm square. Okay, so the thing is, then Riley went from lay to back handspring to the 2 foot. So everybody changes, but if everybody knows how to go square and knows how to keep adding and adding, like Tammy was saying, then it's a win-win. Then if you decide that's the max they're going to do, just make sure you do a lunge that's square. But if you only do open lunging, open hips, and a lunge, what they call a finish, you will find yourself probably having unstable knees because one leg is bent and one is straight. And then you won't have as clean. I tell the kids, I could blow on you and you fall off. So if they're in the lunge and you can't shake them and they're staying on, then probably that's not a correct lunge. But I close everything, and then the choice is up to the coach and the athlete when they know what they're going to do. So I teach them everything. I don't like lunge, 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 stop, 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 stop. I square, 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 square. Then it's up to the coach and the athletes and whatever if you want to lunge. So that's why Tom Cole had given everybody options of lunging or closing. So that's huge. But you need to address Tammy Sassiano's the arms, because it is huge that our arms are twice as slow as our legs. So then our legs go slower and they have no clue where they're at. So they have to have a place and a purpose. And most of the time it's connections. So.
Thanks, Tammy. Marilee, do you have anything?
Yes. I have just a little different twitch on it. And I'm not going to talk as much about the landing because I agree with, I teach step in, step in, step in, step in, step in on everything. And then when it comes time for competition, a small lunge. But like right now in the summer, everything is stepping. But for me, like I find from the very beginning of teaching a handstand, step in, back handspring, or 2 back handsprings or whatever, that I like kids to finish low. Like I like to tie the events together, and we've learned so much in the past couple years about loading. And because the arms are slow, if I really wanted to get an arm speed back, whether it be whatever event, do I start with my arms by my ears, or do I start with my arms in front middle or low, a little bit below front middle? I would rather start with my arms low so that I can then get the arm speed. So I'm loading by staying low when I finish. So like say in a complex, I'll do both. We'll do 5 handstand step-ins to low. We'll do 5 handstand step-ins to overhead because you need both. But I do feel like so many kids do a timer, finish with their arms over their head, walking backwards. And I have found that that tends to cause balking. When kids do a handstand step in or a back handspring to low arms, and I don't let them downswing, low arms, and they learn to do this, which then lifts their hips at the same time. I think there's too much arm speed up to the head before they learn where they're at, control. So if you do a back handspring and they step in, they see the beam, they see their arms out in front, they feel confident and secure in that position, which is a loaded position to be able to jump and swing to the next one. Sometimes also, if you have them stand up too fast, just like on tumbling, their knees buckle. If you stand up too fast, they lose sight of where they're at, and visually they get scared. So I'm not going to say anything is wrong or right. I've just had more success, as I have learned from Ivan, about loading to increase speed and rotation. So when I'm teaching back handsprings, I want them to be able to be as solid as a rock, toe to heel, arms, visual, everything right here. So when I want them to go back handspring, layout full, they know where in the heck they are. So that's my opinion, just based on trying to connect to load to get to bigger things down the road.
Any other comments from any ladies, or can we move on? Because we are a little pressed for time. All right. So we're going to do one more question, and then we'll have our final comments. So once again, this has been a wonderful panel. 1 hour just flew by, and there's such a wealth of information. So please consider this almost like a part 1 or an introduction. All right. So we're going to go into the next acro skill, and a skill that's kind of, once again, ubiquitous and a lot of concern is teaching the roundoff. Especially for dismounting purposes, the hand position, the feet position, learning how to set and everything. Tammy Biggs, can you please take us with the roundoff on beam?
Okay, first of all, I don't like the roundoff on beam from a hurdle. Basically because in the past Olympic trials, people that had a roundoff dismount, they would crunch the hurdle up to the end and do a bad roundoff, which means they lost their vault Uchinko for double twist, and they lost their tumbling, and I had to go reteach it. So if you do round-offs, you have to really make sure they do it like a cartwheel family. They land and they make sure they measure it, because if you just tear down the beam and you slip your foot and land with the wrong foot in front, there's been, at the most important meet of the kid's life, they've been injured. So it's not that I don't like round-offs. I don't like the hurdle to the round-off for dismounts, and I don't like it crunched to the end. So if you can do it as the cartwheel lead-up drills, one-arm second-hand cartwheel, square, spot your head, and they can do it from a knee, from a stand, and then control the hurdle into it so it's not something that's going to danger them at their most important meet or go over and haunt the other events. So I put in some round-offs in the middle of the beam to fix that. So that's a requirement I have. They have to do the round-off correct and land. So a cartwheel close lands with your bad foot, like a side aerial. So if you do round-off, you should be landing with your bad foot, and then you jump. Because otherwise, if you slip and put your good foot in, you could roll your ankle, you could do whatever. And again, it's only happened at the kid's most important meet, like championships or trying to go to college. So it's a pet peeve. I know Linda Mobihill really was adamant, like I was, and we would go to JO camp and I would teach them what we think is right, but whatever you and your coach want, that's okay. To me, it's safety. And so I don't think people drill it enough. They just tear down the beam and think a round-off's okay. And not on my watch.
Thank you. Tammy Salciano, your philosophies on round-offs, especially for dismounts.
Well, I prefer back handspring dismounts over round-offs, but obviously it just depends on the athlete, what the comfort is. You know, it starts with, again, a good cartwheel, squaring off, making sure that their feet are nice and square and safe. Like I said, I prefer going backwards, but it's not for everyone. And if you have a good square cartwheel, a round-off can really work for you, you know.
And Mary Lee Tracy,
I don't have a
words?
lot to add. I agree with both of them. I don't have any other differences. I would say just a little bit on the arm thing. Like I feel the same way, that they need to get the good cartwheel step in and know where they're at, see the beam arms narrow before they try to get the flight and go all the way up over their head, because a lot of times that's where the chest drops because they're scared, and then the feet go down and the knees buckle. So, you know, cartwheel step-ins are huge if you're going to use a round-off. And I agree 100% on the feet placement. It's got to be the opposite foot, because then it also then is about the twisting that comes out of it and the layouts and so on. So Tammy, that was a great explanation for the round-offs.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you so much. So because we are pressed for time, we are going to now end questions. I do apologize for not getting to everyone's question, but as you can see, we had a wealth of information to give. And once again, we're only scratching the surface. I have to admit, as a coach myself, I've really come to love and appreciate beam so much. You know, when I first started my gym, I was the only coach, so I had to coach beam. And I was very fortunate to actually spend time with Tammy Biggs and Mary Lee Tracy, learning beam and getting better as a coach. I've been very fortunate. Elizabeth Price has now come in now and then to help coach beam with us.
Nice.
I love her.
Evie's great. You know, I used to coach her, so we're very close. And then we have full-time Mackenzie Shank, who was the Rutgers University beam all-time beam score when she was there. She had the actual record for her school. So, you know, we have some great beam now. So still got to work on my bars. It's driving me crazy. But beam is gorgeous. So I'd love to go to each of you. Give us your words of wisdom on beam. Any words you want to say to coaches, starting coaches, experienced coaches about, you know, getting a strong beam program, getting strong beam workers. Tammy Salciano, could you please start us off?
I think beam is just all confidence. You know, good fundamentals and confidence. And if you're coaching beam, you have to be very patient and technical. Once you spook a child, an athlete on the beam, it's very hard to have success. So just be very patient, good fundamentals. I think sometimes coaches overdo numbers on beam, and I think that's a big problem. You don't need a lot of numbers. You do very, very low numbers. Like I said, when we were doing elite gymnastics, and Tammy had actually taught me this, and of course I'm watching Mary Lee Tracy and all the great people out there. they're not getting up there and doing 20 beam routines a day. They're not doing 20 of each skill. They're doing very good low numbers of very technical, high-level gymnastics, you know? And when you see an error, pull them down, you know, take them down off the beam and fix that error. I think sometimes coaches are, you know, are just too hard pressed to get the skills too fast, you know? And if you don't have a good progression going in, you really lose the confidence of the athlete. And again, like Mary Lou Tracy was talking about earlier, you know, that beam cardio down is critical. It's critical. Numbers down, you know, and numbers working the actual active arms, you know, heart rate up, trying to get a 1.5 minute beam routine in a minute, get 10 in a row. You know, that beam cardio is really critical. So.
Thank you so much. Mary Lee Tracy, your words of wisdom, final words.
Be visual. Make sure your kids know where they're at. Make sure they see what they're doing. Make sure they understand beam's a straight line. And the straighter you say, the more power. And I would also say too, it's artistry into and out of, like Tammy said, but even when you're teaching the basics or when you are teaching a new skill, teach into, during, and out of. So where do you want my arms, my body parts when I'm going into my skill? What happens during the skill and what happens when I finish? And be very detailed about every one of them. Like I may have a child put their arms one place, Tammy another, the other Tammy another one. It's important that they know, because we're trying to build their confidence, where they go. I don't know that there's any one right way, but it is important to know into, during, and out of exactly what you want your athlete to do and that they want to do, because they may say, oh, it feels better to put my arms here. Oh, okay, great, but put them there every time, and put them there every time exactly the same way. It begins in complex. When you create your complex, you teach a complex, you coach a complex, as detail oriented as you are during that time is what you're going to get when you do skills. So make sure on a beam workout, probably any workout, but beam, make sure that every detail of your complex, your drills is choreographed into, during, and out of. Done.
Thank you so much. And Tammy Biggs?
Okay, so I agree on a lot of things. So basically working against the clock is huge. So most of our national team coaches, national team kids and everybody that's done fabulous on beam, they hit their turning point when they could do 6 routines under 10 minutes. So the thing is you can do them with the laser, you can do them on the floor, but it trains their brain, it makes them accountable. And so you work against the clock on complexes, on this, on that. So they learn to do time management and to be efficient at the same time. And remember that it's not the high numbers at the end. I always say you get about 3 turns when you go to a meet or it's a cold routine. And those are different other ways to train. But it's the quality and the expectation you put on them. And in a positive way, that you get excited for them on the detail. So if you get excited on the floor, get excited on the laser, get excited on that, their quality and confidence will be tenfold. And then again, work against the clock, raise the expectation, make sure you know what they're thinking, beginning, middle, and end of every skill. And about the arms, there's not a right or wrong in anything, but I'll give you an example of what the judges say. They would go, Tammy, I didn't know what to do, but I couldn't identify where their arms were at any time. So that tells you, if a judge can't see it and they're still going, oh my God, she's kind of soft and mushy and whatever, it has to be appealing and to our eyes, to the judge's eyes, and it has to have a place for everything. Then it's very easy to change it. Like she's saying, you don't like it there, let's try something else. Everybody's different, short, tall, whatever. But again, the being positive, being excited for them, moving them forward and working against the clock, and always artistry in and out so that it says the whole sentence and it's not a skill.
Thank you so much, Mrs.
Tammy,
Biggs.
I just have to say one thing. Tammy, one of the things that you you really taught me on beam that is to have a script on
Yes.
beam, just like you
Yes.
do on floor. Like
Yes.
you know where everything is at all times.
And if you notice when Suni, and it's same thing with Miley, when they hit the point where they were fabulous, they had a script and they had everything, and every place had a purpose and a place. Yeah. It makes their scores go up very fast and very quick. Doesn't matter what level.
Wonderful. Once again, I wish to thank our wonderful panel. This has been one of the most amazing discussions we've had on balance beam. I really do feel we're going to have to bring these ladies back again in the future and discuss even more, because we haven't even gotten into like the saltos and the switches and the turns and, oh my God, and of course, high level dismount. So there's just so much more to discuss. But I think we have a great groundwork, great foundations for coaches and people in general. You know, seek these ladies out. You know, they're wonderful people. Go to their gyms, go to the 300s, the W400s, go to the Make It Right camps. I mean, you really have to. I mean, I've learned so much personally from Mary Lee Tracy and Tammy Biggs. And I'm sure you ladies probably get sick of me always popping up, right? It's like, John, what are you doing here again at the W400?
No, we love it. We love it.
And you're going to see me again, because I'm planning to come to Boston for Make It Right, and I'll be at the W400
Awesome.
next year. So you can't get rid of me. Sorry.
Good. Thank goodness.
So once again, thank you to everyone, especially our panelists and all our audience, for joining us on Coaches on Couches, episode 13, Beauty and the Beam. And we have to teach ourselves that the beam is not the beast. It is our friend. And when you're a strong, confident, aggressive beam worker, I won't lie, I don't think there's anything more beautiful or amazing thing in the world, sports-wise or athletic-wise, to watch. It is truly a work of art. It is amazing. So once again, thank you so much for joining us on July 10th at 8 to 9 p.m. Have a wonderful night, and good night, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you, John.
Bye.
Thank you, Mary
Bye.
Lee.
Thanks for
Bye,
coming.
Tammy. Bye, Mary Lee.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You guys take care. Be
good
safe.
luck.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, Pat. Bye, Larry. Good luck to everyone. Thank you so much on the reopenings. Once again, I am so blessed to have such a wonderful panel. I'm just going to do some closing comments real quick. And we are going to go. So once again, this was Coaches on Couches, episode 13 on July 10th at 8 to 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is John Min. I'm the USECA video chairman. I'm also the owner and head coach of MAGMA Gymnastics, now with 2 locations, one in Hillsborough and one in Phillipsburg. This episode was Beauty and the Beam. Oh, I'm sorry. Beauty and the Beam, a little play on word on the Beauty and the Beast tale. We had Tammy Biggs, who is now at Salesiano Gymnastics in Las Vegas. Tammy Biggs is renowned as being a wonderful clinician and part of the national staff. We also had Mary Lee Tracy of CGA, who has created many, many great athletes and Olympians. She is also part of the USAG staff and has worked extensively with the W300 and W400. And of course, Tammy Salesiano, you know, one of the founders and the leaders of the Make It Right camp in her own gym, Salesiano's, out in, I think it's actually in Nevada, outside of Vegas, I think. I apologize for the exact location. But a wonderful gymnastics facility. Her and her husband run a wonderful facility, so please check it out if you're in the area. And of course, Christy Phillips Bannister, but unfortunately she was not able to join us due to a family emergency. So once again, I wish to thank all those panelists. Next week, we have a great episode. It's kind of funny. We talked about beam, confidence, fear. And next week, we're going to move into the fear and the mind and the motivation of it. So Coaches on Couches 14, July 17th, the mind, fear, and motivation with Dr. Ali Arnold, Dr. Alan Goldberg, Ken Miller, and Lisa Mitzel. And that's next week. So please join us for that episode. It's going to be very exciting. They're going to talk about motivation, how to get your athletes to do stronger, better, more confident. It's something that we need to deal with everyone. So once again, have a wonderful weekend, and thank you for joining us. Take care, Pat. Thanks for being here. Good night.
Take care, John.